I think that is a tiny kind of thing that might possibly be shared, because a lot of women will be looking at that fabulous long mane of hers and thinking,
Yeah.
I have to go into chemo soon. The doctor's pretty certain I'll be dead bald, like I was.
Well, I mean, that's actually interesting. I mean, not even as criticism, but as media advice. I think people would love to hear that. I think people
They
would love to know.
when she's ready, because she hasn't. We don't even know which cancer it was so far. But I just think that for nearly all women who have to go into chemotherapy, one of the huge dreads is hair,
of course,
and especially if they've had it down to their waist and beautiful like hers, and they just want to know how was this done. This is wonderful, delighted for her, but just give us a clue.
That's the Princess of Wales is, of course, she is cancer free. She has put out what has been described as an intimate video. Of course, it's the opposite of intimate. It's glossy, it's emotional, it's produced like a music video, or the montage at the end of Lord of the Rings, perhaps, when Frodo goes home, and yet it's extremely moving, because it has to be, because this is a woman who has come through what can be a horrendous battle for many people, and the country is sort of deeply invested, as indeed we should be. Libby, what did you think about this?
I'm very soppy that way, because it's a young family. It's a real young family who's been through a real thing, and I thought it was touching. I thought it was very, as you say, glossily produced, with those little sort of drop-in bits which looked like old royal family films and so on. So I was in sympathy, and I am very pleased that she's saying it. Look, I am standing with you, everyone else who's going through this stuff. However, having been through this stuff myself for 5 months, having been through chemotherapy a couple of years ago, one of the things a lot of women will be wondering, and I'm going to say it because Times Radio has no fear of anybody's views, that for a lot of women, hair is a very, very big thing.
Right.
And basically, you lose it. I was bald as a coot. Mine has been, because I'm older than her, very, very slow to grow back, very, very thin, all the rest of it. A lot of women really dread it. But her hair is fantastic, and is the old fabulous Catherine hair, which I think a lot of people will actually want her one day to say, what was the treatment? Did she have one of these things called a cold cap, which can work for some people? What happened? I think that is a tiny kind of thing that might possibly be shared, because a lot of women will be looking at that fabulous long mane of hers and thinking, I have to go into chemo soon. The doctor's pretty certain I'll be dead bald, like I was.
Well, I mean, that's actually interesting. I mean, not even as criticism, but as media advice. I think people would love to hear that. I think people would love to know.
When she's ready, because she hasn't. We don't even know which cancer it was so far. But I just think that for nearly all women who have to go into chemotherapy, one of the huge dreads is hair,
of course,
and especially if they've had it down to their waist and beautiful like hers, and they just want to know how was this done. This is wonderful, delighted for her, but just give us a clue.
That's really interesting. James, what did you think of the video? I mean, because I always think with royalty, there's a sort of, how to put this, there's a sort of paradox there in what they have to do, because you don't get posher than royalty. And this woman, she's a history of art graduate, and yet there she is having to do something that appeals, like literally is designed to appeal to as many people as possible on a kind of sort of sentimental level. What did you think of the video as a video?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. It really feels like another kind of era in royal communications has started. There's never been a video quite like this. Even the video when she announced her cancer last year was much less slick, much less produced, and this is sort of, it feels like they've learned very rapidly from the Meghan Markle communications playbook, glossiness, slickness.
Let's hear a bit of that video.
This time has above all reminded William and me to reflect and be grateful for the simple yet important things in life, which so many of us often take for granted, of simply loving and being loved. Doing what I can to stay cancer-free is now my focus. Although I have finished chemotherapy, my path to healing and full recovery is long, and I must continue to take each day as it comes.
Yeah, and that is the Princess of Wales releasing her video announcing the end that she's completed her cancer treatment, which is on. It's basically being discussed on the front pages of every newspaper today. Let's move on to talk about another story in the Times today. The Times reports that thousands go straight from university to long-term sickness. Thousands of people never begin work; they go straight to long-term sickness. But this isn't a story just about students; it's also about worklessness. There are now a record 2.8 million people off sick, and as the paper says, in Britain, 1 in every 15 people of working age is now off owing to a long-term illness. A rate 69% higher than Germany and more than twice Italy's level. Libby, I'm trying to think which way round to talk about this. There's a phrase sociologists use when they're talking particularly about depressed areas, which I think I can get away with saying only once on radio if I apologise for it in advance, and that is shit life syndrome. You know, it's a phrase used when they're talking about deprived communities, how people live. I wonder if something's happened in Britain where an awful lot of people are in this situation.
Yes, I think so. And also quite a lot of them are on NHS waiting lists for some form of treatment, mental or physical. You know, they just are, you know, and that is not helping. And it was never going to help. You know, the years of neglect of the NHS, you know, have affected that. But I think I am really, to be honest, if I may focus it down on the British students thing.
Of course.
Students straight from university
Yeah.
into long-term sickness, a great deal of it being mental. That really bothers me because it seems to me there are three things here. One is pastoral neglect, because they go to university, you're 18, you're technically an adult.
Yep.
When I was at university, it was just after the age changed and up to 21, you know, you weren't technically an adult. And believe me, the staff, you know, the dons were far more aware of what's going on in that person's life.
Yeah.
You know, why is she not at the lectures? You know, what's happening? What's going on? So I think there is now a sense that, oh, well, they're young adults and so it doesn't count. But actually, a lot of them have been away from home before. And that's a huge thing. And then, of course, there's the over-zooming. There's the fact that too much teaching has gone totally online and stayed that way since COVID. And that is it's disorienting. I mean, I'm sitting here with you two today and it's really lovely. You know, if we're
sure.
on Zoom, like I quite often are, it's not the same.
Coming out of COVID as well. I mean,
And then there's the other third thing there, over expectation with students. I think the idea that you have to have a graduate job is sort of nonsense, you know, because there's so many graduates now since Tony Blair sort of upped the numbers and it stayed up. And I think there are probably too many, and some would be happier in apprenticeships learning to do something physical with their hands or, you know, a vocational training. And instead you come out, you think, I need a graduate job. And you look at all the cases that people keep quoting and, you know, this is something, look, go work in your local cafe. There's a huge shortage of hospitality workers. Go see some people, you know, write a mischievous little blog about it or something, but get on and go out. And instead, I think there's a certain kind of, I'm a graduate. I've got all this debt, this enormous debt, which I can't pay because no one will give me a graduate job. So I think we have a huge problem with university and the end of university, as well as the major worklessness thing.
I mean, certainly I'd say that when I graduating from university, the period after that was probably the hardest time of my life. I didn't know what to do with my life, and and people, you can see, you know, it can be a very depressing and difficult time. And I'm sure much more so, James. I mean, I was lucky enough to leave university at least at a time when, if I did get a job, if I did go on and have a career, then I was going to be able to afford a house and have what looked like a normal life. And I wonder if people are so disheartened by what seem to be the prospects for young professionals these days that they sort of think, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly daunting thing to confront. And you're quite right about that being one of the toughest times in life. I remember once having an interesting conversation with someone who was a researcher into loneliness, and they were saying that when these surveys pick up, you know, loneliness and proportions of loneliness in the population, and always an important part of that is people who are about 21, 22, who've just left university, and that is always, I think, the loneliest, most sort of disconnected portion of the population that is uniquely, as you say, uniquely difficult and lonely time in life, with those daunting expectations, with also, I think, a lot of people going to university and maybe being a bit less, just because we know that modern teenagers are a bit less independent, they spend more time at home, they socialise less, just a little less prepared for life, and kind of maybe slightly on the back foot in that way, in a way that previous generations of students weren't. Plus the huge expectations, you can see why it's a problem. You can see why that, you know, just overwhelms a lot of people. And I wonder if part of the answer has to be universities accepting that, you know, they're getting cohorts of students who are a bit less prepared to stand on their own 2 feet, and they need to intervene and, you know, prepare people for that difficult post-university period a bit better.
I still struggle with, I struggle in a way, while knowing I'm wrong, with the idea that universities should have any pastoral role at all. Because I think these are adults at university, but of course they should. And in the same way that these days employers should as well. But I think I find, looking in myself, I'm quite shocked by my own conservatism in that regard.
Look back into the oeuvre of that non-conservative lady, Germaine Greer. She spoke quite brilliantly about the pathos of these 18, 19-year-olds that she dealt with, one of whom had attacked her or something. You know, she said, look, actually, these are kids, you know, why are we treating them as if they're fully grown up? They've been raised as kids, they are kids. And so I think that kind of encouragement is necessary and useful. And of course, the other thing is that going into work, any job, you know, lowly job. I worked in endless cafes and bars and so on. You get company. There's other people around you. You do have a laugh with your colleagues.
You have function and meaning.
Even if you're
Yeah.
laughing at them, you've got people. It's not just having meaning. You might be doing a meaningless job in a meaningless cafe, but on the other hand, there's people around you, and it's saved people for centuries, that comradeship in a workplace. And I hate the idea of these kids sitting at home anxious with a screen.